Sarah Martinez looked at her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. It was only 7:30 in the evening, but she already felt tired. Her feet hurt from walking around the restaurant all day. She had been working at Romano's Italian restaurant for almost 6 months now. Every day was the same. She would arrive at 11 in the morning and leave close to midnight. The restaurant was not just any restaurant. It was one of the most expensive places in the city. Rich people came here to eat fancy food and drink expensive wine. Sarah had never eaten at a place like this before she started working here. The prices on the menu still shocked her sometimes. Sarah picked up the water glasses from table 5 and walked toward the kitchen. As she passed by the corner of the main dining room, she stopped for a moment. There it was again, the beautiful, black piano that nobody ever played. It sat there every day like a piece of art. Sarah had asked her manager about it once. He told her it belonged to the restaurant owner's grandfather. It was very old and very valuable. Every time Sarah walked past the piano, she felt something strange in her chest. Her fingers would move a little, like they wanted to touch the keys. But she never did. She was just a server. Servers did not play pianos in fancy restaurants. Sarah's real dream was music. She had learned to play piano when she was 7 years old. Her mother saved money for 2 years to buy her an old piano from a neighbor. Sarah practiced every day after school. She got better and better. Her teacher said she was special. She said Sarah could be a great pianist one day. But dreams cost money. When Sarah turned 18, her father got very sick. He could not work anymore. The family needed money for doctors and medicine. Sarah had to forget about music school. She had to find a job instead. Working at Romano's was not her first choice, but it paid better than other restaurants. The rich customers left big tips. Sarah needed every dollar she could get. Her father was getting worse, and the medical bills kept coming. The restaurant was busy tonight. Friday nights were always crazy. Sarah looked around the dining room. Every table was full. Well-dressed men and women talked and laughed while they ate. Their jewelry sparkled under the soft lights. Sarah sometimes wondered what it would be like to have so much money that you did not worry about anything. At table 12, there was a group of 5 men in expensive suits. They had been there for 2 hours already. Sarah had served them 3 bottles of wine. The man sitting at the head of the table looked different from the others. He was younger, maybe in his 30s. He wore a simple black shirt instead of a suit, but Sarah could tell he was important. The other men listened carefully when he spoke. Sarah had heard one of the other servers talking about him. His name was Marcus Chen. He was very rich. He had started a computer company when he was young. Now he was worth billions of dollars. Sarah found it hard to believe that someone so young could have so much money. Marcus seemed nice enough. He always said, please, and thank you when Sarah brought him something. He was not rude like some of the other rich customers. Some of them acted like Sarah was not even there. They would snap their fingers at her or talk about her like she could not hear them. As Sarah walked past table 12 with her tray of dirty dishes, she heard Marcus talking about business. He was telling the other men about a new deal his company had just made. They would make millions of dollars from it. Sarah tried not to listen, but it was hard not to hear. The amount of money they were talking about was more than she would make in her whole life. Sarah went into the kitchen and put the dirty dishes in the washing area. The kitchen was hot and noisy. Cooks were shouting orders to each other. Servers were running back and forth with food. Sarah took a deep breath and picked up the water pitcher. She needed to refill the glasses at table 12. When she got back to the dining room, she noticed something different. The restaurant seemed quieter than before. Not silent, but somehow more peaceful. Sarah looked around to see what had changed. Then she realized what it was. Someone had turned down the background music that usually played through the speakers. Now the piano in the corner seemed even more obvious. It stood there like it was waiting for something. Sarah had always wondered what it would sound like. The keys were probably out of tune. Nobody had played it in years. But still, she wondered. Marcus was watching her as she filled his water glass. Sarah tried not to look directly at him, but she could feel his eyes on her. She wondered if she had done something wrong. Maybe she had been too slow with their drinks. Maybe she had forgotten something. "Thank you," Marcus said when she finished filling his glass. His voice was kind. Sarah smiled and nodded. As she turned to leave, Marcus spoke again. "You keep looking at that piano?" he said. "Do you play?" Sarah stopped. She felt her face get hot. She had not realized that anyone was watching her. "A little," she said quietly. "Not very well." Marcus smiled. "I bet you are better than you think." Sarah did not know what to say. She looked at the other men at the table. They were all looking at her now. She felt embarrassed. "I should get back to work," she said. "Of course," Marcus said. "But maybe later. If you have time, you could play something for us." Sarah's heart started beating faster. "Oh no, I could not do that. I am working, and I am not good enough to play for people." "Everyone is good enough to make music," Marcus said. "Music is not about being perfect. It is about sharing something beautiful." Sarah wanted to say more, but her manager was looking at her from across the room. She could tell he was wondering why she was talking to customers for so long. "I really need to go," she said. Marcus nodded. "I understand. But think about it. That piano is probably lonely. It would love to hear some music." Sarah walked away, but Marcus's words stayed with her. For the rest of the evening, every time she looked at the piano, she imagined what it would be like to sit down and play. Her fingers remembered the feeling of keys under them. They remembered the joy of making music. But this was real life, not a dream. She was a server in a fancy restaurant. She was not a pianist. She was just trying to make enough money to help her family. Playing piano was something she used to do, not something she could do now. Still, as the evening went on, Sarah found herself thinking more and more about Marcus's words. The piano did look lonely, and she missed music more than she had realized. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to play again someday. The clock on the wall showed 9:15. Sarah had been working for over 10 hours, but the restaurant was still busy. Her legs felt heavy and her back ached. She carried a tray of desserts to table 7, trying to smile even though she was tired. When she walked past table 12 again, Marcus was still there with his business partners. They had finished eating, but they were still talking and drinking coffee. Sarah noticed that Marcus watched her every time she walked by. It made her feel nervous, but not in a bad way. Sarah went to the kitchen to pick up more coffee for another table. When she came back out, one of the servers stopped her. "The man at table 12 wants to talk to you," she said. "The rich one in the black shirt." Sarah's stomach felt funny. Had she done something wrong? Maybe she had spilled something without noticing. Or maybe she had forgotten to bring them something they asked for. She walked slowly toward table 12, trying to remember if she had made any mistakes. Marcus smiled when he saw her coming. "Sarah, right?" he said. "That is your name?" "Yes, sir," Sarah said. She was surprised he knew her name. Most customers never bothered to learn the servers' names. "I have been watching you all evening," Marcus said. "You work very hard, and you are very good at your job." Sarah felt relieved. He was not angry with her. "Thank you, sir. Is there anything else I can bring you?" Marcus looked at his business partners, then back at Sarah. "Actually, there is something, but it is not food or drinks." He paused and smiled. "I want you to play that piano." Sarah felt like someone had just thrown cold water on her. "What?" she said, not believing what she had heard. "The piano," Marcus said, pointing to the corner. "I want you to play it right now." Sarah looked around the restaurant. Other people at nearby tables had heard what Marcus said. They were looking at her now. "I cannot do that," she said quickly. "I am working. My manager would be very angry." What if your manager said it was okay? Marcus asked. What if I talked to him and made sure you would not get in trouble? Sarah's hand started to shake a little. I do not understand. Why do you want me to play piano? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Because I think you have something special. I have been in business for many years. I am good at seeing things that other people miss. And I see something in you. One of the other men at the table laughed. Marcus, what are you doing? Let the girl work. But Marcus did not take his eyes off Sarah. I will make you a deal, he said. If you play one song on that piano, I will give you $10,000. Sarah felt like the room was spinning. $10,000. That was more money than she made in 6 months. That was enough to pay for her father's medicine for a whole year. You are joking, she said. I never joke about money, Marcus said. $10,000, one song, right now. The other men at the table looked shocked. One of them whispered something to Marcus, but he shook his head. I am serious, Marcus said to Sarah, but there is one rule. It has to be beautiful. If you just bang on the keys, you do not get the money. It has to be real music. Sarah looked at the piano. It seemed so far away, even though it was only across the room. She thought about her father lying in his hospital bed. She thought about all the bills her family could not pay. $10,000 would change everything. But she also thought about how embarrassed she would be if she could not play well. What if the piano was out of tune? What if she forgot how to play? What if everyone laughed at her? I cannot, she said. I am sorry, but I just cannot do it. Marcus nodded like he understood. I know you are scared. That is normal. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you played piano? Sarah thought about it. 3 years ago, she said quietly. Right before my father got sick. And you loved it, did you not? Sarah felt tears starting in her eyes. She tried to blink them away. Yes, I loved it very much. Then this is your chance, Marcus said. This is your chance to do what you love and help your family at the same time. Sarah looked around the restaurant again. More people were watching now. She could see her manager talking to another server. He kept looking over at table 12. Sarah knew he was wondering what was taking her so long. My manager will not let me, Sarah said. He will fire me if I stop working to play piano. Marcus stood up from his chair. What is your manager's name? Mr. Rodriguez, Sarah said. Marcus walked across the restaurant to where Mr. Rodriguez was standing. Sarah watched as Marcus talked to her manager. She could not hear what they were saying, but she could see Mr. Rodriguez's face change. First he looked confused, then surprised, then excited. After a few minutes, Marcus came back to the table. Mr. Rodriguez followed him. Sarah, her manager said, Mr. Chen has made a very generous offer. He wants to rent our piano for a few minutes. Of course, you should do whatever our customer wants. Sarah looked at Mr. Rodriguez, then at Marcus, then at the piano. She felt like she was in a dream. This could not really be happening. You do not have to do this, Marcus said. But I think you want to. I think you need to. Sarah thought about her father again. She thought about how happy he used to be when she played piano for him. She thought about how much she missed making music, and she thought about $10,000. What if I am not good enough? She asked. Then you tried, Marcus said, and that is worth something too. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay, she said so quietly that Marcus had to lean forward to hear her. I will do it. The restaurant seemed to get quieter as word spread that something interesting was about to happen. People stopped eating and started watching. Sarah felt like everyone in the room was looking at her. She walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt like it took forever. When she finally reached it, she stood there for a moment just looking at the keys. They were clean and white, waiting for someone to touch them. Sarah pulled out the piano bench and sat down. She put her hands on the keys but did not press them yet. She closed her eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to play. She tried to remember the music that used to live in her fingers. Behind her, the restaurant was completely quiet now. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to watch. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at the keys again. This was it. This was her chance to change everything. All she had to do was play one beautiful song. Sarah sat at the piano bench, her hands resting on the keys. She could feel everyone in the restaurant watching her. Her heart was beating so fast she thought people might be able to hear it. The piano keys felt smooth and cool under her fingers. She had not played piano in 3 years. What if she had forgotten how? What if her fingers did not remember what to do? What if the piano sounded terrible because nobody had tuned it? Sarah pressed one key very softly. The sound was clear and beautiful. She pressed another key, then another. The piano was perfectly tuned. Someone had been taking good care of it, even though nobody played it. Behind her, Sarah could hear people whispering. She heard someone say, "Is she really going to play?" Another person said, $10,000 just to play piano? I wish someone would pay me that much. Sarah tried to block out the voices. She needed to think about music, not about the money, or the people watching. She closed her eyes again and tried to remember her favorite song. It was a piece by Chopin that her piano teacher had taught her when she was 16. She had practiced it hundreds of times. The song was called Nocturne in E-flat major. It was soft and beautiful, like a lullaby. Sarah's teacher had told her that nocturnes were meant to sound like nighttime. They were supposed to be peaceful and dreamy. Sarah put her fingers in the right position on the keys. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes filled the restaurant like magic. The sound was so beautiful that Sarah almost stopped, playing from surprise. She had forgotten how much she loved this feeling. The music seemed to flow from her heart, through her arms, and into her fingers. As she played, Sarah forgot about everything else. She forgot about the people watching her. She forgot about being nervous. She forgot about Marcus and the $10,000. All she could think about was the music. The melody danced through the restaurant. It started soft and gentle, like a whisper. Then it grew a little stronger, like someone telling a beautiful story. Sarah's fingers moved across the keys like they had never stopped playing. 3 years of not playing piano disappeared like they had never happened. In the dining room, amazing things were happening. People stopped talking completely. Forks were set down on plates without making any sound. Wine glasses stayed half raised to lips as people forgot to drink. Even the waiters and kitchen staff came out to listen. At table 12, Marcus leaned back in his chair with a big smile on his face. He had been right about Sarah. She was not just good at playing piano, she was incredible. The other men at his table looked shocked. They could not believe that their server was this talented. An older woman at table 3 had tears in her eyes. The music reminded her of her grandmother who used to play piano when she was a little girl. A businessman at table 8 forgot all about the important phone call he was supposed to make. He just sat and listened. Sarah played through the first part of the song perfectly. Her fingers remembered every note, every timing, every emotion. The music told a story without words. It spoke about dreams and hopes and beautiful things that people sometimes forgot to notice. As she moved into the second part of the song, Sarah began to add her own feeling to the music. This was not just playing notes anymore. This was Sarah, telling her own story through Chopin's music. She played about missing her dreams. She played about working hard every day. She played about love for her family and hope for the future. The restaurant had become completely silent except for the piano. Even the air conditioning seemed quieter. People were not just listening to music. They were experiencing something special. Some people had never heard piano played this beautifully in person. Sarah's technique was perfect. Her timing was exactly right. But more than that, she played with real feeling. Every note meant something. Every pause told part of the story. This was not just a server playing piano for money. This was an artist sharing her gift with the world. Marcus watched Sarah's face as she played. Her eyes were closed, and she looked peaceful and happy. This was clearly where she belonged, not carrying plates in a restaurant, but making beautiful music. Marcus began to think about more than just the $10,000 he had promised. The song moved into its most beautiful part. Sarah's left hand played deep, rich notes that sounded like a heartbeat. Her right hand danced above them with a melody that sounded like singing. The two parts worked together to create something that was bigger than either part alone. A young couple at table 5 held hands as they listened. They had been arguing about money before the music started, but now they remembered why they loved each other. An old man eating alone at table 9 smiled for the first time in weeks. The music made him think of his wife, who had died last year. Sarah could feel that something special was happening, even with her eyes closed. The energy in the room had changed completely. People were not just listening. They were feeling the music in their hearts. This was why Sarah had fallen in love with piano in the first place. Music had the power to touch people in ways that nothing else could. As the song began to reach its ending, Sarah opened her eyes for just a moment. She saw that everyone in the restaurant was watching her, but they were not watching because she was strange or different. They were watching because she was creating something beautiful. Sarah closed her eyes again and played the final part of the song. The melody became softer and softer, like the sun setting slowly. The notes seemed to float in the air before fading away. When she played the very last note, Sarah held it for a long moment before lifting her hands from the keys. The restaurant stayed completely quiet for several seconds. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full of the music that had just been shared. Then suddenly, the entire restaurant exploded with applause. People clapped and cheered like they had just heard a famous pianist at a concert hall. Some people stood up from their tables. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Sarah sat at the piano bench, shocked by the reaction. She had never played for so many people before. She had certainly never received applause like this. Her hands were shaking, but not from nervousness anymore. They were shaking from excitement and joy. Marcus was clapping harder than anyone else. He had a huge smile on his face. The other men at his table looked amazed. One of them said, "I cannot believe our server just did that." Sarah slowly stood up from the piano bench. The applause continued for almost a minute. She looked around the restaurant and saw faces full of joy and wonder. These people had just experienced something special, and she had been the one to give it to them. As the applause finally began to quiet down, Sarah walked back toward table 12. Her legs felt wobbly, like she had just run a long race. She could not believe what had just happened. She had played piano in front of all these people, and they had loved it. Marcus was waiting for her with the biggest smile she had ever seen. Sarah walked back to table 12 on shaking legs. The applause was finally dying down, but people were still looking at her with amazement. She felt like she was in a dream that she might wake up from at any moment. Marcus stood up when she reached the table. His eyes were bright with excitement. "That was incredible," he said. "I knew you were special, but I had no idea you were that talented." Sarah did not know what to say. She had never received praise like this before. "Thank you," she said quietly. "The piano is very nice. It made it easy to play." Marcus laughed. "The piano did not make that music. You did. That was real talent." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I am calling my assistant right now to transfer the money to you. You earned every penny of that $10,000. Sarah watched as Marcus spoke to someone on the phone. $10,000. It still did not feel real. Just 20 minutes ago, she had been a tired server hoping to make enough tips to help pay the bills. Now she was about to receive more money than she had ever seen at one time, but Marcus was not done talking to her. When he finished his phone call, he sat back down and looked at Sarah seriously. "Can you sit for a minute? I want to ask you some questions." Sarah looked around the restaurant. Her manager nodded at her from across the room. Clearly, when a customer like Marcus wanted to talk, servers were supposed to listen. Sarah sat down in the empty chair at the table. The other men smiled at her kindly. One of them said, "That was the most beautiful piano playing I've ever heard outside of a concert hall." Marcus leaned forward. "Sarah, I have to ask. If you play piano like that, why are you working as a server? You should be performing in front of thousands of people." Sarah felt her eyes start to water. This was the question she had been afraid someone would ask. "It is complicated," she said. "I have time," Marcus said gently, "and I am very good at solving complicated problems." Sarah looked at her hands. She had never told her whole story to a stranger before, but something about Marcus made her feel like she could trust him. Maybe it was because he had just given her a chance to do what she loved most. "I was supposed to go to music school," Sarah began. 3 years ago, I was accepted to the best music school in the country. They wanted me to study piano there." Marcus nodded. "Juilliard?" Sarah looked up in surprise. "How did you know?" "Because talent like yours only comes from someone who has been training for something big," Marcus said. "What happened? Why did you not go?" Sarah took a deep breath. "My father got sick, very sick. He had been working in construction for 20 years, but he hurt his back badly. Then the doctors found other problems, too. He needed surgery and medicine that cost a lot of money." The men at the table listened quietly. Marcus's expression grew more serious as Sarah continued her story. "My family does not have much money," Sarah said. "My mother works at a grocery store. My little brother is still in high school. When my father could not work anymore, I had to choose. I could go to music school and follow my dreams, or I could stay home and help my family pay for my father's medical care." "That must have been a very hard choice," one of the other men said softly. Sarah nodded. "The hardest choice I ever made. I wanted to go to music school so badly, but I could not leave my family when they needed me most. So I gave up my place at Juilliard and got a job instead." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "How is your father now?" "A little better," Sarah said. "The surgery helped with his back, but he still cannot work, and the medicine he needs costs $800 every month. That is why I work so many hours here. The tips are good, and we need every dollar we can get." "What about music?" Marcus asked. "Do you still play at home?" Sarah shook her head sadly. "We had to sell our piano 2 years ago to pay for medical bills. I have not played at all until tonight. Sometimes I go to the music store downtown and play their pianos for a few minutes when nobody is looking. But mostly, I just try not to think about music anymore. It makes me too sad." The table was quiet again. Sarah could see that her story had affected these men. She felt embarrassed for telling them so much. "I am sorry," she said. "You probably do not want to hear about my problems." "Do not apologize," Marcus said firmly. "Your story is important, and it makes what you just did even more amazing." He paused. "Sarah, can I ask you something else? If you could do anything in the world, what would it be?" Sarah did not have to think about her answer. "I would study music. I would learn to be the best pianist I could be, and then I would perform for people who love music as much as I do." She smiled sadly. "But that is just a dream now. I have responsibilities." Marcus looked at the other men at his table. They seemed to be having a silent conversation with their eyes. Finally, Marcus turned back to Sarah. "What if I told you that your dream does not have to stay a dream?" he said. Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" Marcus smiled. I mean that talent like yours should not be wasted serving food in restaurants. You should be on stage, sharing your gift with the world. But I cannot afford to go to music school, Sarah said. And even if I could, my family still needs my help with money. What if both of those problems could be solved? Marcus asked. Sarah did not understand what he was getting at. How could both problems be solved? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Sarah, I am a very wealthy man. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But you know what I do not have? I do not have the ability to create beauty the way you just did. That is a gift that no amount of money can buy. Sarah waited for him to continue, her heart beating faster. I built my company by investing in talented people, Marcus said. I look for people who have something special, and then I help them succeed. Tonight, I found someone very special. One of the other men at the table nodded. Marcus has helped dozens of young people achieve their dreams. He started a foundation that pays for education and training for people with exceptional talent. Sarah felt dizzy. Are you saying what I think you are saying? Marcus smiled. I am saying that if you want to go to music school, I will pay for it. All of it. Tuition, living expenses, everything. And while you are in school, I will make sure your family receives enough money every month to cover your father's medical expenses. Sarah stared at Marcus, unable to speak. This could not be real. Things like this did not happen to people like her. There is only one condition, Marcus continued. You have to promise me that you will work as hard as you can. You have incredible natural talent, but talent without hard work is wasted. If you are willing to dedicate yourself to becoming the best pianist you can be, then I am willing to invest in your future. Tears started rolling down Sarah's face. She tried to wipe them away, but more kept coming. I do not understand why you would do this for me. You do not even know me. Marcus's expression grew serious. Sarah, I grew up poor too. My parents worked multiple jobs just to put food on the table. When I was your age, someone believed in me and gave me a chance to succeed. That chance changed my entire life. Now I have the ability to give other people the same kind of chance. He reached across the table and put his hand on Sarah's shoulder. Tonight, you did not just play piano beautifully. You reminded everyone in this restaurant that there is still magic in the world. That is worth more than money. That is worth investing in. Sarah looked around the table at the faces of these successful men. They were all looking at her with kindness and hope. She thought about her father, who had always told her to follow her dreams. She thought about her piano teacher, who had said she was meant to make music. She thought about the feeling she had just experienced while playing for all those people. Would this really be possible? She asked through her tears. Could I really go to music school? Marcus nodded. If Juilliard will still accept you, you could start as soon as the next semester begins. If not, we will find another excellent music school that will. Sarah could barely breathe. Her entire life was about to change because she had been brave, enough to sit down at a piano and play one song. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want to do this more than anything in the world. Marcus grinned. Then consider it done. Marcus stood up from his chair and raised his wine glass. The restaurant had returned to normal conversation, but people were still looking over at their table with curiosity. Sarah sat in her chair, still trying to understand that her life was about to completely change. Everyone, Marcus said in a loud, clear voice. May I have your attention, please? The restaurant grew quiet again. All the diners turned to look at Marcus. Sarah felt nervous as she realized he was about to say something to everyone. A few minutes ago, you all heard something extraordinary, Marcus continued. You heard real talent, pure, beautiful talent. He looked down at Sarah with a warm smile. This young woman, Sarah Martinez, has just agreed to accept a full scholarship to study music. She is going to become the concert pianist she was meant to be. The restaurant erupted in applause again. People cheered and clapped even louder than they had after Sarah's performance. Someone at table 9 stood up and shouted, "Congratulations!" Other people began standing too, giving Sarah what felt like a standing ovation. Sarah could not stop crying. Happy tears ran down her face as she looked around at all these strangers who were celebrating with her. She had never felt so much joy and support from people she did not even know. But Marcus was not finished. "I have one more announcement," he said. "I am not the only person here tonight who believes in Sarah's talent. I would like to invite anyone else who wants to support her journey to do so." An older gentleman at table 4 stood up. "I am Robert Chen, Marcus's uncle. I am also a classical music lover. I would like to contribute money for Sarah to buy the best piano available for her practice." A woman in an elegant dress at table 7 raised her hand. "I am Margaret Williams. I run the city's biggest music venue. Sarah, when you are ready to perform your first professional concert, you will have a stage waiting for you." Another man called out, "I know the head of admissions at Juilliard personally. If you need help getting reaccepted, I will make some phone calls." Sarah looked around the restaurant in amazement. Complete strangers were offering to help her succeed. She had never experienced anything like this in her entire life. Marcus sat back down and spoke quietly to Sarah while the other offers continued. "You see, when people witness real talent and genuine heart, they want to be part of something special. You have touched everyone here tonight." Sarah wiped her eyes with her napkin. "I cannot believe this is happening. This morning I woke up, worried about paying rent. Now you are telling me I can go to music school and follow my dreams." "Dreams have a way of coming true when you are brave enough to reach for them," Marcus said. "You were brave tonight. You took a risk, and it changed everything." Mr. Rodriguez, Sarah's manager, walked over to the table. He looked excited but also a little confused. "Sarah," he said, "I just got a phone call from the restaurant owner. Someone told him what happened here tonight. He wants to offer you a job as our weekend piano player. You could perform here every Friday and Saturday night while you are in school." Sarah looked at Marcus, who was grinning widely. "It seems like the whole universe is conspiring to help you succeed," he said. Over the next hour, Sarah exchanged contact information with several people in the restaurant. Margaret Williams gave her the phone number for her booking agent. Robert Chen promised to take her shopping for a piano the following week. The man who knew someone at Juilliard gave her his business card and promised to make calls on Monday morning. Marcus's assistant arrived with paperwork for Sarah to sign. The scholarship was real and official. Marcus had created it through his foundation, and Sarah would be the first recipient. The documents showed that all her expenses would be covered, plus a monthly allowance for her family. "There is one more thing," Marcus said as Sarah signed the last paper. "I want you to know that this is not charity. This is an investment. I believe you are going to become a world-famous pianist someday. When you do, I want you to remember this night, and I want you to help other young people the way I am helping you now." Sarah nodded seriously. "I promise, if I become successful, I will definitely help others follow their dreams too." "When you become successful," Marcus corrected her with a smile. "Not if, when." As the evening wound down, Sarah realized she needed to call her family. Her mother and father would not believe what had happened. Her little brother would be so excited that his sister was going to music school. Marcus walked with Sarah to the front of the restaurant. "My driver will take you home tonight," he said. "Tomorrow, my assistant will call you to begin making arrangements for school. We will also set up the monthly payments for your family right away." Sarah shook Marcus's hand, then impulsively gave him a hug. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I had almost forgotten was there." "Thank you for reminding me why I love music," Marcus replied. Tonight was special for everyone in this restaurant, but especially for me. As Sarah rode home in Marcus's expensive car, she looked out the window at the city lights. Everything looked the same as it had this morning, but everything was different. She was different. She thought about her father, who would be so proud. She thought about her piano teacher from high school, who had always believed she was destined for great things. She thought about all the music she would learn and all the people she would play for in the future. 3 months later, Sarah walked through the doors of Juilliard School of Music as a full-time student. She had been reaccepted immediately after Marcus's friend made a few phone calls. Her family's medical bills were paid every month like clockwork. Her father was getting better, and her mother had been able to reduce her hours at the grocery store. Every Friday and Saturday night, Sarah performed at Romano's restaurant. Word had spread about the talented server who had become a music student, and people made reservations specifically to hear her play. She donated half of her tips from those performances to a fund that Marcus had helped her create to support other young musicians. Sarah's first big concert was scheduled for the following year at Margaret Williams's venue. Marcus had already bought tickets for himself and promised to bring all his business partners. Sarah's family would sit in the front row, including her father, who was finally healthy enough to attend. The night at Romano's had lasted only a few hours, but it had changed Sarah's entire life. It had also changed Marcus, who continued to search for talented young people to support through his foundation. And it had changed everyone else who had been in the restaurant that night, reminding them that extraordinary things could happen when someone was brave enough to share their gifts with the world. Sarah kept the program from her Juilliard recitals in a special frame in her dorm room. At the bottom, she had written a note: "Dreams come true when you are brave enough to play your song." Years later, when Sarah performed at Carnegie Hall for the first time, Marcus was there in the audience. As she played the same Chopin nocturne, that had started it all. She looked out at the crowd and remembered that magical night when everything changed. She remembered the feeling of sitting at that restaurant piano, scared but hopeful, ready to play her heart out for a room full of strangers. And she remembered that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from taking one brave step toward your dreams, even when you do not know what will happen next. That night at Romano's, Sarah had learned that talent combined with courage could create miracles. She had also learned that there are people in the world who believe in dreams and are willing to help make them come true. The little girl who had practiced piano after school every day had grown up to become exactly what her piano teacher had predicted: a woman who brought beauty into the world through music. And it all started with one song, played with love, in front of people who were ready to listen.